Perez Reed was born on November 10, 1995 in Bellefontaine, Neighbors, Missouri. He was birthed into a single-parent household led by his 17-year-old mother, with his 30-year-old father being completely absent. Around the age of 9, he and his older brother will move with an older cousin in the area. Both of Reed's parents were seen as unfit and not even willing to take on the responsibility of taking care of Reed and his brother. Details are unclear, but his father would eventually come into his life, and by this time, Reed had a long list of crimes that he had committed. He would be charged in 2015 for reckless driving in Charlotte, Missouri, after failing to stay on the right side of the road. In 2019, he would be charged with fourth-degree assault after he headbutted a correctional officer at the St. Louis County Justice Center. He had been detained for riding the train without a ticket, giving false information, and having outstanding warrants. During this stint in jail, Reed would file a lawsuit for deprivation of rights in late 2017 after his appointed public defender would urge him to undergo a mental health exam before his trial. Reed argued that he was mentally fine. The lawsuit would later be dismissed. Around this same time, Reed would also get married. He would marry his then-girlfriend Anicia Alder in June of 2019. During the marriage, Reed would live with Alder in a Kansas City apartment, but problems would soon follow after. The landlord had not approved Reed to live in the complex, and Alder would eventually be homeless and living in the cars of some of the complex's residents. She would often threaten the community with violence, and Reed was said to be accompanying her during these outbursts. When Reed was 20 years old, he would be accused of setting fire to the very home that he and his family members lived in during his youth.
Different story in August of 2016 when Ferguson police say Perez Reed set this attached garage on fire even though 4 members of his family were inside the home. A police report obtained by the I-Team says Reed's father, aunt, cousin, and grandmother were huddled together and visibly shaking when officers arrived.
They were all in the home during his attempt, and he would succeed in doing noticeable damage to the home. Before he would set fire to the home, he would threaten to beat up his cousin. After he set fire to the home, Reed would steal his father's car so he could flee before the police arrived. Because his family did not come to court, the charges were eventually dropped. And had the family had pursued the charges, Reed would have ended up doing 5 to 15 years due to him also having a record before this incident. Reed was questioned by the police and his involvement in the house fire, to which Reed would completely deflect and attempt to avoid accountability. He would then say that he got into a fight with his cousin because she apparently stole from him. Reed's family will be on record saying that they urged him to get help for his mental health, and also that he was very manipulative and volatile. He was described as bipolar and/or schizophrenic. Reed would often physically and verbally assault people if he didn't get his way, including his own family members. Throughout his entire childhood and some of his adulthood, Reed would be urged by many people to seek mental help. He never did. He always said that he was fine, that there was nothing wrong. On September 12, 2021, a St. Louis County man would narrowly escape death as he would be shot in the back and chest multiple times while he waited for a bus. The man did not see who shot him and was left with permanent disabilities after the incident. On September 13, 2021, shots would ring out at 9:30 p.m. Local residents didn't think much of it because hearing gunshots was a normality in the neighborhood. First responders would later find 16-year-old Marnay Haynes Jennings, Missouri, lying in the middle of Glen Owen Drive after being shot multiple times. She succumbed to her injuries.
16-year-old girl from Jennings is dead after running away from home. St. Louis County Police are investigating after she was found shot dead in the street.
Marnay would be described as a young, energetic girl with a great sense of humor to those that knew her. On September 16, 2021, an unidentified woman would be shot in the face, but would make it to a nearby gas station where she would be transported to a local hospital and survive the ambush. Later that same night, a St. Louis mother was leaving her boyfriend's house to make a run to the local convenience store. It was a night like any other, and she would be returning shortly. Shots rang out at 11:45 p.m. on the 3800 block of West Florissant Avenue. Pamela Abercrombie would be found lying on the sidewalk with a gunshot wound to the head and would be pronounced dead after being rushed to the hospital. Pamela will be described as the life of the party, a great mother and grandmother, and will also be seen helping the elderly in the community on a regular basis. On September 18th at 11:52 p.m., shots will be heard and picked up in a section of North St. Louis by a shot spotter. Upon arrival, the police did not find any victims or signs of disarray. The next day, a man will be found dead in a vacant lot in the same area that the shots were heard in. 24-year-old Carey Ross would be pronounced dead at the scene due to a gunshot wound by a .40 cal Smith & Wesson. Exactly 1 week later, Lester Robertson would be killed by gunfire at about 7:15 in the morning on the 1700 block of Barbados Lane in front of a boarded-up home. He would have gunshot wounds in his head and in his hand. Responding officers will find shell casings from a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson. At 40 years old, Lester had recently returned to St. Louis after living in Florida and being away for years. He had been known locally as a standout two-sport athlete and homecoming king at Afton High School. Robertson had been fighting a drug addiction after becoming dependent on opioids ever since a work-related injury. His pill addiction would then move to heroin, and you can often find Robertson picking up trash in a local parking lot. Robertson's brother would state that Perez Reed wasn't a friend of Lester's, but they would sometimes do heroin together. On October 28, 2021, Reed would take a train from St. Louis to Kansas City. 35-year-old Damon Irvin would be seen on footage entering the Wyandotte Tower with Reed. Not long later, Damon and Reed could be seen entering Damon's apartment. The following day, Reed would return to the Wyandotte Towers, but this time he had been accompanied by 25-year-old Rau'Daja Fairrow. The two would enter Fairrow's apartment at 6:58 p.m., and Reed could be seen leaving the apartment and building around 15 minutes later. On November 1st, 2021, Kansas City police would search the Wyandotte Towers and find 3 deceased residents in separate apartment units. 66-year-old Roy Wright would be identified, but his death would be ruled a death by natural causes. But the other 2 people would be ruled homicides. Both Rau'Daja Fairrow and Damon Irvin would be found with gunshot wounds to their chests and heads. Casings would show that both victims died from bullets from a single .40 cal Smith & Wesson. Rau'Daja would be remembered by a large family as a joy to be around, and her uncle, who had taken care of her for most of her life, would urge the assailant to turn himself in. 35-year-old Damon Irvin was a college graduate who had received a scholarship to sing opera in Germany before his college career. Irvin's mother and brother would beg for answers as to why someone would do this to such a talented man. On November 5th, 2021, Reed would take an Amtrak train from Kansas City to Independence, Missouri. FBI agents were able to track his phone and match the train tickets that he had purchased. After searching Reed, the police would find a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, a set of keys, and a debit card that didn't have his name, but rather the name of Stephon Johnson. Reed would be taken into custody and transported back to St. Louis. Reed was sat down and interviewed about his whereabouts and also if he had anything to do with the recent string of murders in St. Louis and Kansas City, in which he would deny. On November 8, 2021, Kansas City police would enter an apartment unit in the Brush Creek Towers after being contacted about a local Kansas City man not responding to his calls from his family. Police will find 20-year-old Stephon D. Johnson dead in his apartment's closet after being shot in the head by a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol. Evidence from the scene was collected, and a single cigarette packet will be taken in and searched in case it contained any DNA. Perez Reed not only used the same gun in all of his attacks, but he also wore the same shoes, which helped the FBI and local law enforcement narrow down their search. In both of the Wyandotte attacks, Reed was seen entering and exiting the apartment building. Each time he could be identified by the distinct crescent moon tattoo that he has in the middle of his forehead. The last case, which was Stephon Johnson's murder, had been pieced together fairly easy because the keys that Reed had been arrested with on November 5th matched the padlock on Johnson's apartment door. The cigarette packet that had been at the scene also had came back positive for matching Reed's DNA. Reed is being held at Jackson County Correctional Facility in St. Louis, Missouri, and being held for the murders of Marnay Haynes, Carey Ross, Stephon Johnson, and Lester Robinson on a $2 million cash bond. He will be extradited to Kansas City to face trial for the murders of Rau'Daja Fairrow and Damon Irvin. Reed is innocent until proven guilty.